We are live.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for the Council's redevelopment entity meeting. This meeting is called to order in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting was sent to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Highland Park Planet on January 22nd, 2021, and was posted on the Borough website at www.hpborough.com and on the bulletin board of Borough Hall, 221 South 5th Avenue, Highland Park, New Jersey, on January 22nd, 2021, and has remained continuously posted as required by law. As mayor, I preside over this meeting and may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant statement or the participation in the virtual meeting if the participant statement does not adhere to the 3 minutes provided to each participant for public comment, or if the statement is abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Roll call, please.
Mayor Burl-Mittler.
Here.
Councilwoman Canavera.
Here.
Councilwoman Foster. Councilman George. Councilman Hale.
Here.
Councilmember Hirsch.
Here.
Councilwoman Kim Chohan. Special Counsel Bauman.
Here.
Special Planner Jim Constantine. Borough Administrator Hover.
Here.
All right, may I have a motion to accept the minutes of December 8th, 2020 regular meeting?
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Canavera.
Yes.
Councilman Hale.
Yes.
Councilmember Hirsch.
I'm inclined to abstain because I was not on the council when that meeting took place. They looked accurate though, having attended that meeting, but I'll abstain.
You should abstain.
All right, we have two discussion items tonight. The first is the downtown redevelopment plan updates. And I'm going to ask the team of Borough Administrator Terry Hover and Councilman Matt Hale to talk about where we are. Who's going first?
I'll start because I think I have kind of the more straightforward component. I know straightforward is probably the wrong word, but, and also I would offer our special counsel Bauman's here. He may want to throw in when Matt and I are done.
Very good.
But essentially what I felt the main reason I was suggesting we have this meeting, given that we don't have a huge agenda, was I wanted to make sure council was aware of where we were now that we're in the new year with regard to our downtown redevelopment planning effort, as well as the public, and kind of just relay out the steps we're going to take to move the plan forward. Just to be clear, we don't have a draft plan at this point. We have taken in a lot of information from our stakeholder meetings, from the November Council redevelopment meeting, from several other meetings we've had with property owners adjacent to our various tracks that we're focused on, that we've been taking in, and not to mention a considerable amount of written comments that we've received from folks along the way. So we're in the process now, and by we, it's the royal we, but I really mean our borough planning team at LRK is charged now with coming up with a draft plan for us to kind of reflect on. That draft plan will be the zoning proposal for these various tracks that we've been talking about. The downtown area, tract A, the gateway area, track B, 130, 134 Raritan, track C, what we're used to as our borough parking lot where the farmers market is, and then the North Third area, which is track D. Sorry, I got minorly distracted by Tara's cat. Give me one moment to get my head back on. So we're in the process now of kind of filtering in the considerable feedback we've gotten from council along the way as well. So we're in the process of putting that into a draft plan form that then can be shared with the public and the council, and we will be presenting it at a future meeting of this redevelopment entity. We're going to be doing our schedule, so anybody who's listening in will know that they can check our calendar and see when that gets put on the agenda. I don't have a specific date yet because honestly, they're kind of in that early phase where I'm not sure if we're going to be in a position to present them all together or do them more segmented. That's a decision we'll have to make collectively. So last year I put out a lot of dates, and then when we adjusted our dates based on our kind of outreach process, people were like, what about the dates? What about dates? So I'm staying away from the dates, and I'm going to represent now that the process is the same that I proposed last year will be the same process that we're going to do this year, where we would present that draft plan at a council redevelopment entity meeting like this tonight, or at a special meeting if for some reason that needs to be, and we'll notice it accordingly. But then it would have to be, once it's kind of ready for prime time, introduced at a regular meeting of council. Following that, it would be referred to the planning board for its public meeting, where it would have to review it for consistency with our master plan. And then they would have to kind of issue a kind of a statement on consistency, as well as any other comments they might have for council's consideration. And then that would lead into a public hearing scheduled for a regularly scheduled council meeting, at which time the public could give comment, and then council could ostensibly vote at that time on the plan. So there are really several points along the way in the public process where the public has the opportunity to give comment, and we can also take that in and make adjustments along the way. But right now we're in the process of drafting the plan. And so there have been talks, I've gotten questions, where's the plan? I want to see the plan. That's what's being worked on. That will be made available once there's a draft that we think represents the direction that we were going in, be posted on our website so people have a chance to review it, as well as presented in a more formal way through a Zoom meeting where we kind of walk through the key elements of the plan. So I guess that's all I wanted to cover, and then I will hand the baton over to Councilman Hale, because we have honed some of our thinking, and I think he's going to talk about some of the things that we've come to since we last met.
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate that. And then we're also going to have Joe, if he wants to chime in as well, make sure we got everything covered.
I told him if we don't do it right, he can do cleanup.
Right, he can fix it if we don't. So, I wanted to let everybody know that we have 46 attendees tonight. I know that there's been an issue in making sure that we know the number of people who are out there on this meeting. So I appreciate everybody who's attending tonight. As a result, I'm gonna try and be as brief as I can so that we have plenty of ample time for additional public comment. As Terry said, we have, when we raised the idea of a redevelopment plan, and when we first started this process with stakeholders and people in the area and publicly, we put an idea out there, and we've gotten an enormous amount of feedback on the plan itself and on the way that it's structured. And our goal is to take a great deal of that feedback and put it back into the written document of the redevelopment plan. As Terry said, we don't have that now. We have a concept, we have an idea, and the comments that we've heard and the discussions that we've had are going to be reflected in a large way in the written document that LRK and the professional staff is working on. I will say that we have said to the professional staff that we would like them to work on it, but that we would like them to get it as right as possible prior to releasing it, so that I'm not calling them every day saying, make this happen. We are giving them the time and the latitude to attempt to craft a plan that meets a lot of the things that we have discovered and found and come to. And so let me just talk about some of those. So one of the things that we've heard from the great deal of public attention to this is that rather than have a redevelopment plan that encompasses all of the different tracks all at once, so that it is an all or nothing event. That there is some advantages to separating the different tracks into different redevelopment plans. It'll all be within one ordinance as we move forward. But the goal of this sort of separation is that if there is a ability to move ahead with a good project on track A, and we are still working on details of track B, C, or D, we can move ahead with A under the way that we're intending it to be drafted. So that the idea is that provides a little bit more flexibility within the plans than perhaps was originally conceptualized. So that's a direct result of the comments that we've heard from many people. Second thing that we've heard repeatedly again and again is that we need to have a commitment to permanent public space. That is a value of Highland Park, and something that we have heard again and again is wanted. And so we intend that the draft plan will have a commitment to a public space on 3rd Avenue. And that we intend to have that be a viable public option, public space in some fashion. And so that's another sort of way that we feel that we've been responsive to some comments that we've heard, many comments that we've heard from people. So that a commitment to 3rd Avenue as a public space, and a permanent public space. The other idea and guiding principle that we gave to the planners for the document is that we believe that there is a way of crafting some additional flexibility within each of the development plans so that they can accommodate a potential centralized parking structure, or they can accommodate on-site parking. So that the idea is that rather than mandating a centralized parking structure, that the way that we are hoping that we can craft it is that if developers come in and say, we would like to have some on-site parking or some centralized parking, some hybrid model that does a little bit of both, or some that says we would like to have a centralized parking, that those can be accommodated within the broad strokes of the redevelopment plan. We've said repeatedly, and I think it still holds true, that the idea of, I'm sorry, Stephanie's Bernie Sanders behind her head just for the first time. Excuse me. The idea of having the capacity to have either on-site parking or a centralized plan is something that our professionals believe that they can craft within the redevelopment plans. I'll say again that we still think that there is a great deal of potential and value for a centralized parking option. We believe that is a strategy for getting the types of the number of people that we hope to shop and to live downtown. That hasn't changed, that still remains. But we believe that that we've listened, and we believe that having a more flexible structure that allows for the potential of on-site parking at the sites and a centralized plan is something that we can do in the overall redevelopment plan. And then another thing that has bubbled itself up, or another thing that we've heard is, I would say, a connection, making sure that we are keeping our eye on the ball of connecting any downtown development with access to public transportation and access to the trains. And so one of the things that we are cognizant of, one of the things that has been highlighted again and again, is down the road, when if there are plans, if there are negotiations with future developers, that there is a hope and an appetite that we can integrate some of that process into things like shuttles over to New Brunswick, so that there is an integrated transportation plan. And we have some history of that with Mary World and the development down on Walter Avenue, that we've worked with developers on some of those, and we hope that we can continue to do that. So those are the four, again, trying to distill it as much as possible to the four things that we have tasked the professionals with crafting within the redevelopment plan, in response to what we've heard so far to the presentations. As I said, as Terry said, there's going to be at least 4, if not more, opportunities for public hearings and public comment once the plan is crafted. Not to mention the number of comments that are in various meetings and emails and all of those, where the public will have another opportunity, many more opportunities before the plan would be adopted. And then I'll just point out, and maybe Joe can go into this a little bit more, is that once the zoning changes are put forth in a redevelopment plan, we are still many months away from any shovel hitting the ground. There will be a process by which we will look for developers and put the various properties out into the market. We will listen and hear from developers who will come up with concepts and ideas within the zoning framework that we hope the redevelopment plan will have. All of those will be part of a public process. In addition, as those come to fruition, as those happen, ideally as multiples ideas of what we should do for the different places happen, there will also be things like fiscal analysis, things like parking analysis, things like traffic analysis. All of those things are part of the process down the road, which we fully intend and will have to do. So we do recognize that those are all things down the road, and believe that we're ready to do this. So I think that covers what I was hoping to cover about the direction that we've given to the planners, and as they craft a document. Again, that document will be open for public comment as well. And that's sort of the update of where we are at this process. So go ahead, Terry or Joe.
Just real quick before Joe, the one thing I think, I think you covered everything. Sorry, Mayor.
Just trying to get in there.
Sorry.
One thing before we go further, the one thing I would want to add to what you said, Matt, was the fact that we are in constant contact with the schools, so that as we move forward, they will be involved and they will know what kinds of student ratios we might have, and we can plan together.
Excellent point. Thank you. I missed that one. Yep. Terry?
The only thing I'd add, but I don't think it falls into the category that you were covering, we have discussed, although we haven't, the idea about bringing on a consultant to look more closely at parking management, broadly speaking, not just about a centralized parking garage, but also about the concerns that were raised regarding pressures on existing neighborhoods and how we might be able to best manage that with as we move forward with these projects, which isn't necessarily in the scope of work of our planning team right now, but it is on our radar, and we're going to be working with our special counsel to identify potential consultants that might be able to advise us moving forward, because that's come through loud and clear as well.
And included in that would be the neighborhood parking.
That's what I was referring to, Mary. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Joe?
So I'm going to, I've read many of the emails and comments and questions. And I guess I want to focus on what I think continues to be maybe a fundamental disconnect, and I'll take responsibility for not getting it out there clearly enough, of where we are in the process, where we're going, and how how we're in the infancy of a multi-year process that will have lots of input. So this process always begins with the public sector identifying a problem and putting paper to pen, pen to paper, and putting it out to the public to look at and comment on. And that's what we did. And we did that in the form of pictures, PowerPoints, and presentations. And then for the last several months, and it's gone on multiple hearings, we're gathering information. So we haven't even gotten sort of to the first legislative action to be taken by the governing body. We're still months away from that first legislative action. And so we put something to paper, we get the feedback. Some people say, I don't like it. And that's sort of all the input we get. And others have more nuanced and comments, which frankly, I think are generally much more helpful because they can craft a solution as opposed to the whole thing doesn't work for me. So we're trying to take all those comments. If the comment is it doesn't work at all, then there's not much we can do with that. But the comments that give real meaningful comments like, can we separate these plans into multiple plans? Can we figure out a way to be flexible about parking? Can we talk about the height? All those things that we're collecting all that information. And then we share that with our planner. Our planner is going to draft 4 plans, 1 plan for each identified area, taking into the unique considerations associated with that particular area, and prepare plans that will be flexible and designed to achieve our goals, and have built into them future protections for after they're even adopted. And the future protection is going to be that you can't build according to that plan until you sign a redevelopment agreement, enter into a contract with the governing body. So, but that plan is just being crafted now. That writing is just being crafted now. And once we have that and we can share with the public, then those pictures will come to life in the form of words and heights and setbacks and second floor setbacks and all the things that we can really sink our teeth into as opposed to the pictures. The pictures, I'm not always a general fan because people get married to pictures and people like pictures, but what's really going to matter are the words that are coming out of these plans. And so I continue to try to emphasize that hopefully the public will continue to give us input, but they'll embrace the process when we provide the plans to the public, pick them apart, talk about the words that we craft. How can we make this better? Is it protecting us? Is it meeting our goals? Is it flexible? And all involved. And so that's our next step. These 4 plans, which are, again, I think our planner is working on, but we're probably 30, 60 days away from that. And we'll continue to collect comments through that. Then once we have the plans, now we're going to go through a whole nother vetting process with the public all over again, pretty similar to what we're doing now, where people will again be able to provide input and make suggestions and tweak it until we get to the point where the governing body is ready to introduce the plans. And that's a 2-step process: introduction, adoption, like any other ordinance, trip to the planning board in between. So 3 meetings just for that process. And that's just to get us to zoning. And that's not even to the point where we're going to try and solicit proposals for our land or deal with property owners for their lands, all coming in the future. So I just want to continue to try and emphasize to the public and the council that I know understands this. We're not even really out of the gate, right? We're just getting started. We had to put paper to pencil with thoughts and ideas, and we did that. And we are now collecting information. And now we're going to have our planner draft the actual zoning, the plan for each of these areas. And we're going to put that back out into the public, and we're going to collect comments again. And so this is really the definition of how a stakeholder public sector process has to work. It's absolutely transparent. It's everyone's being asked to involve, and it's going to continue along this way. And there's no doubt in my mind that a couple things are true. There's a recognition that there's an issue that we need to solve, which is our downtown needs more economic development. I think that seems to be universal, almost universal, and that the goal is to try and create more development in our downtown. That's where we are today. And then there was an attempt by the planners, and then with input from the governing body and the professionals to lay out what those pictures might look like and what could go where. And we got a lot of information about that. And now they're writing the words, and we'll see those words together. And, we'll see them first, obviously, to make sure that they make sense. And then eventually the public will see them all together, and then we'll take comments again. So again, it's a process. We're at the infancy, just asking everyone to try and embrace the process. Don't give up on it too early. Don't throw out the process when we haven't really even gotten to step one of a legislative action.
Thank you, Joe. Council members, do you have any questions for Terry or Matt or Joe? Okay, then we'll move on to the second topic on the agenda, which is the 2021 meeting schedule. Who's got that one?
Maybe I'll ask Jen to help me out with that because I don't have the attachment in front of me. It's basically the dates we already penciled in for the redevelopment entity meetings
For 2021.
for 2021, just to bless them in one fell swoop.
So you just really need to do a motion and a second, and you could do a voice vote if you all agree on the dates that were presented.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, then you got everybody?
I did, thank you.
Okay, at this point, we move into our public comment section. Each speaker has 3 minutes, but may comment on any topic related to redevelopment. The borough clerk will monitor the time and will offer a 30-second warning and then indicate when 3 minutes has lapsed. The session will wrap up by 9 p.m. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone or select the raise hand button in the application. The borough administrator will announce your turn by reading out your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number. Please begin by telling us your first and last name, as well as your address. Again, if you would like to speak about a topic on the agenda, please raise your hand using the application or press *9. Borough Administrator, please announce our first speaker if there is one.
Yes, Mayor, and just to update, we're at 48 attendees and 9 raised hands at the moment. First up, I have Peter Spool. Peter, just state your name and address as the mayor indicated.
Yes, this is Peter Spool. I live at 146 Graham Street in Highland Park. I'll be brief. So I'd first recommend to the planners that, seeing as how they say they have goals, that in the plan that's published, they be clear about just what the goals are, as well as the connection between the goals and significant design features of each plan. I'm not talking about things like color or the kind of surface on the buildings, but significant features that really matter to the town and to the residents. Second, I would say it really is important to have significant parking at each site. One way to make that easier would be if each parcel was larger. So I urge a serious attempt to try to acquire additional properties and consolidate them with the existing ones. Third, I actually think the place where the original plan was to have a parking deck would actually be, since it's the largest parcel, the ideal place to actually put a residential building. One could use the ground floor for some parking, make that an under the building parking area. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Pete.
All right, hold on a second. I have David Copperman next. Please state your name and address.
David Copperman, 120 Hill Street. A couple of things, please. At the December redevelopment entity meeting, apparently a vote that was scheduled at that time for something, I'm unclear what, December, or was going to happen December 12th, was pushed out to early March. I didn't hear anything in the way of a timeline for this process as you're describing it now. Is anything now on the table to be voted on in early March, which would be about 5 weeks from now?
Do we have any records on what item it was that?
The plan. It was to be the plan is what you were stated that you were going to be voting on early March. For March the 3rd is the date I have in my head, but certainly the first week.
Yeah, let me try this, Mayor. So we've been getting a lot of comments, probably more than we even anticipated. So the actually drafting of the plan has been delayed while we continue to collect comments, even as up to today. The planners have been tasked with crafting the 4 plans. The goal might be March, but we don't have a hard date because they haven't completed that task, and we haven't had a chance to review it, and we haven't had a chance to unveil it. So I think we'll just continue to keep the public update with our status, because we want to continue to collect information. We want to be able to have them take their time. We don't feel an urgency to do this quickly. We want to do it right. So we are gathering the information. I think maybe we thought we could do it in December, and then now maybe I think we could do it in March. But if we need more time, I think we'll take the time we need. So it's really a function of when the product is ready.
Okay, that's good to hear. You do need, I would say you definitely do need more time.
Yeah.
My other question concerns the members of this redevelopment entity. It's basically the council and a couple of professionals. I'm curious to understand why there are no town residents in the quote unquote entity. Certainly every commission, planning board, et cetera, that the borough maintains has such participation, but not in this case. I'd like to understand why, please.
That's just a function of the law. The borough council is acting as the redevelopment entity under the redevelopment law, and there is no provision in that statute for anyone other than the borough council.
It's actually stated that it cannot be the case that anyone else participate.
It's stated that the borough council is the redevelopment entity.
Does it preclude members? This is what you're proposing, needless to say, would be a gigantic change to this town. Gigantic. And the fact that it's being done in the way that it is,
30 seconds.
It's a little too closed door, which is why I'm suggesting you need to broaden active participation.
Okay, thank you, David.
Sorry, I was taking notes here. Next up is Dan Stern Cardinal. Dan, please state your name and address.
Hi, sorry, Dan Stern Cardinal, Harper Street. I just want to remind everybody that the big problem here that we're trying to address, as a couple people have said, is the kind of status of the downtown, the main street, the main kind of commercial area of town. And I want to remind everybody that since the 1970 census, the population of Highland Park has been completely flat between 13 and 14,000 residents. It actually was highest of all those in the 1970 census, and it's still below that level according to the 2019 estimate. I don't know what the 2020 number is going to look like, the official number, but it's been flat for now 50 years. Given that situation, the options we have for the downtown are basically try to keep things the way they are, which is going to do nothing to change the trend of the downtown kind of slowly withering away, as we've all seen a bunch of businesses close up even before COVID, and now with COVID that's just accelerating that trend. Or the alternative is to try to attract more people to either live in or visit Highland Park. And under that goal, if we go that route, the downtown could possibly thrive if we do it correctly. We can't freeze the town the way it was 10 or 20 or 50 years ago. That's not an option. That will result in just the main street just withering away. So I think it's obvious that the way to go is a plan like this, like the kind of proposals, the rough ideas that have been sketched out here. I also have one specific question, because something we often hear in kind of places like this is that objections based on the character of a neighborhood or of an area, and is the new development kind of in sticking with the character of that area. And my question is, given areas that we're talking about, areas that have a lot of single-story businesses, a lot of space in between things in what's supposed to be a kind of commercial area, businesses that not only don't attract a lot of foot traffic, but actively hinder foot traffic through those areas. In situations like that, which is what we're facing here, is trying to maintain the character of that area an important goal? I don't think it should be. If the character of the area was conducive to a healthy economic and residential environment, we
30
wouldn't have to
seconds.
redevelop that area in the first place. So the goal should not specifically be to try to keep things basically the way they are, but a little bit better. The goal should be to come up with a usage for that area that is optimal, given all the considerations that go into what we want to see in that downtown. And I think these rough outlines that we have so far do a really good job in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, next.
Next up is Tom Langston. Please state your name and address.
Hi, Tom Langston, 207 Lawrence Avenue, 30-year resident here in town. I'm kind of excited by the idea of this development plan because of the opportunity to bring more residents to the avenue and have people shopping locally and that kind of thing. I've been trying to develop my own retail operation here, and I'm interested in what kind of square footage we're going to see for retail in the development plan. That's all I had to say, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Does someone want to talk about the retail opportunities from this?
The only thing I would say, Mayor, is we are kind of trying to strike a balance between the main emphasis. We really want active first floor. We want that dynamism on the avenue, but we haven't. We're also conscious of not over retailing downtown because of the existing spaces and vacancies we've got. So there's probably going to be a combination of approaches and some flexibility in there, but I think we should all wait to see what the planners cook up in the initial plan draft. And I welcome Tom's input once we see that.
Yeah. But by and large, I think it's a goal is to not create, we have a fair amount of retail space, and I think our goal would not be to put more stress on the retail space, rather put more people to spend money at the existing retail space rather than create competing retail spaces. Kind of our working.
We're finding that balance, and there may be, if there's space we don't have, that's, that might be filling a niche that's not in town. That would be a way we could also differentiate it. But the only reason I mentioned that activating the ground level, because I think in talking about alternatives to retail space, there were some folks who were interpreting that as residential on the ground level, which wasn't necessarily what we were talking about, but we're trying to strike that balance. We want the dynamism that non-residential uses on the ground floor bring to the street, but we also don't want to poach and over retail our downtown. So we'll have to find that balance.
I think it's important also to note that we want to see more of an art presence downtown as well. And there's an opportunity to utilize the ground floor parts of the new development for the arts.
Yeah. All right. Looks like John Valeri is up next. John, state your name and address.
Yes, John Valeri, 106 South 6th Avenue. And as a reminder to all of you and everybody listening, I've lived in Highland Park for over 30 years. My parents are the former owners and operators of Penny's Restaurant that existed for more than 20 years. And I say more than 20 because my mother's cousin Penny owned it before my parents bought it off of them the day she retired. And I think it's great that we're trying to redevelop the town and everything and get more people to come, because I remember years ago being a kid going to Raritan Video, back when Raritan Video existed, which is in that tan-looking building, that yellowish tan-looking building right next to the Papa John's Pizza, formerly the Dunkin' Donuts. And, you know, the town was just literally dead. I mean, I felt like I was in a horror movie. That's how dead it was. And speaking of, you know, redevelopments and feel like I'm in a horror movie, I want to follow up with you with the area between South First Avenue and North and South Second Avenue, because it seems as though during the day, yeah, you know, it seems a bit lively because their business is open. But at night, except for like 2 restaurants, hardly anything's open. Now, I understand that, you know, businesses have their, you know, means of operations and everything, but is there a way we could, is there a way, you know, in the developmental plan that, you know, that area could be redeveloped so that more businesses that are open at night could be there? Whether it be a restaurant, whether it be a comic book store that has like Magic the Gathering or game nights, whether it be, you know, something.
So
I'll take a quick response. You know, one of the reasons why that stretch does not have sort of an active nightlife, or a possible reason why it doesn't have an active nightlife, is that there are not people who are living there. And so if there is a ability to have people in that area, in some of those tracks who are living there, they will drive new types of ventures, because, you know, if you have 50 people in an apartment building and you know, who want to go out for a drink, that might be enough for a bar in that area or something along those lines. That the driver isn't necessarily the zoning about what types of businesses are there. I think the driver is having the presence of people who are living there is a way of getting to that goal. So it's not that I don't know that we have the capacity to sort of dictate nighttime businesses down there, but we do hope that by having more people in that area, the market will bring a more vibrancy, and that could include nighttime.
But when you say nighttime, because the reason, well, now here's another question, because between North and South 4th Avenue and North and South 5th Avenue, that area, there aren't any there's no one lives there. So, but people still go to those businesses at night too. So, how would, you know, people live, okay, how would people living there, you know, in the area between South 1st Avenue and North and South 2nd Avenue be a factor if no one lives in the area between North and South 4th Avenue and North and South 5th Avenue?
So let me jump in a little bit here. So John, nice to hear you. Wish we could see all of you out there. There's really two separate ways of looking at this. There's the redevelopment, which is creating the vision and getting the developers to put buildings there. And then there's the economic development portion of it, which is getting the stores, making sure there's activity, bringing more dollars to the stores and into the municipality. So there's, you know, one has to happen first in order for the second part of it to happen. And once we fine tune and have the development plan in place, and we can start shopping it to different developers, then we'll be able to target different types of businesses that we would want to attract to our downtown. And that includes some of the things that you're talking about as well.
All right, next up, Mayor, I have, it's a phone number whose last 4 digits are 3264. I've unmuted you, so please state your name and your address. Hello?
Hello? Yeah, my name is Donald Ubry. I own the business Ubry's between 1st and 2nd Avenue. And we've had a family business there since 1958. And at this point of time, you know, myself and my son, we run the business. We have a lot of customers in town. And I am kind of opposed to this plan because you're looking to redevelop my property, and I have no other place to go. So that's the comment I have, and I just want to be on record that, you know, we are not looking to sell at this time, and you know, that's it.
Okay, Borough Attorney, you have a comment?
I just want to, I just comment to Mr. Ubry because I know we've traded letters with him and his lawyer. We absolutely understand you want to keep your business, and we have no interest in having you do anything otherwise.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Another phone number, Mayor, last 4 digits, 4445. You're unmuted. Please state your name and address.
Hi there, Lois Webbing, North 2nd Avenue.
I should learn the numbers. Sorry, I should know it by now.
Yes, okay. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit on my notes. Hearing one of the new plans said we have a population of 14,250, and I'm glad it's growing. And yes, we need some sort of economic change downtown. But when you figure there's almost 200 units in the Castle on River Road, Pulte number 1 on Cedar Lane and number 2 on River Road have just been built, 5 so years ago. So those are adding people. The new Heritage Place of townhouses on Cleveland, that's about 100 units. And of course, going up on Walter Avenue, 50 or so people will fit in those 40, I'm told, apartments. So there's certainly going to be an impact, and I'm going to jump and just say, shouldn't we have a fiscal and environmental assessment of some sort, NJDEP, just something more than just the fiscal and the rest of it. But okay, I'm going to start at my number 1. Won't this redevelopment budget of $6.8 million eventually become about $10 million in tax dollars when the bonds are finally paid for? Municipal bonds, I take it. Number 2 question. The new land use plan, the little green booklet, page 31, issue number 4, also wants auto-related businesses moved. The earlier 2004 plan, previous administration, noted problems with the large open curb cuts onto Raritan Avenue as that created conflicts with vehicles and people. But page 68 of this redevelopment plan certainly includes the master plan, now includes Dunkin' Donuts along with Berman's and our longtime business Ubry's and the gun shop. But surprisingly, it actually focuses on the opposite side, which 2004 did not. The Sunoco, the car dealer near First Avenue. But somehow, how did it forget Raceway Gas? Raceway at the entranceway. Will Raceway at least close its Raritan Avenue entrances and only use the Cedar Avenue in and out? Number 3, this master plan's environmental map on page 72 forgot a mini forest along Dennison Street, the dead end. Has about 100 trees, it's a 30 feet by 40 feet, 400 feet long behind the gun shop, Ubry's Bergen's. There's even a 35-inch diameter mother tree. So now you've got slopes and possible flooding when you if that gets ripped out. Charlie Brown's on the master plan on page 47 suggests shared parking, yet the old Charlie Brown's Blue Horse has a barricaded off Dennison Street parking and has blocked Raritan Avenue. Do you really think the owner is going to share?
Thank you, Lois. Okay.
All righty. I'll just give you a quick update. We have 56 attendees currently, and we've got 4 hands raised. Next up is Jonathan Lerner. Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Lerner. I live at 228 Magnolia Street, and I sort of have a two-part question that I'd like to just put out there. I heard tonight for the first time what sounded like an opportunity for the township to peel off the individual segments into individual redevelopment projects instead of all 4 being together. And I'm just wondering, the first part is, if that is done, how could they consider parking? How could they consider projects A, B, and C that doesn't include D, where all the parking is supposed to come? And is this the way how the law is currently written? Does it require all 4 to be done together, or does the law allow, as it's currently written, for individual parcels to be redeveloped individually? Does the law need to be changed at all in any of this?
Joe, do you want to take that?
Sure. Yes, great questions. So one, the law does not require us to put them all together. We can do separate plans, not a problem. 2, each individual plan, as we hear feedback, we are planning to make it flexible that we can consider a plan that parks on site or a plan that parks off-site. And off-site could be in the garage or some other arrangement. So we're gonna craft the plans to allow us the flexibility to consider projects that could either be fully parked on site or perhaps partially or fully parked off site.
Okay, so if Plan D or Parcel D is not included and somebody wants to go ahead with Parcel A, there would have to be a parking component to that project before it would be considered?
Oh, well, parking will have to be addressed no matter what, under anyone already provides us. And the plans will allow for that parking to be on site and or off site. And it will also require that the borough council will have a redevelopment agreement and will be the ultimate arbiter on whether or not we're satisfied with the parking on site or off site or a combination of both. And that's the beauty of the redevelopment process. Unlike land use, right? If this is not redevelopment, you would make a submission to the planning board, and if you're consistent with the plan, that's it. That's the end of the story. But here, our plan is going to say that before you can go to the planning board, you got to sign a contract, redevelopment agreement with the governing body, municipality, and we're going to have all the kinds of details we're talking about in that agreement. Things like design standards, where you're going to park, if there's community benefits or donations of land or art components, all that will find its way into this redevelopment agreement in the future. And that's why we're sort of embarking on this process, because it's going to give us a lot more control and flexibility along the way. So it's hard to talk to people, I guess, sort of without actual words. I'm a lawyer, I like words. And so I think you instead of hearing what I'm saying, you'll see it in words, and we'll together figure out if we're adequately writing it down when we produce these plans and share them with the public.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing is there is an opportunity, somebody could put together a proposal for Project A or Parcel A that does not include parking, and that plan could be considered and voted on or
let's
executed.
I don't even want to, I don't prefer you didn't even hear that. I prefer you just hear that there's going to be a plan. It's going to address all this. And then together we'll figure out if it's adequately meeting the requirements of the public and the stakeholders in the borough. Does that make sense?
I'll keep my fingers crossed.
I'm telling you in concept what's going to happen, but until we see it in words, let's look at it when it's in words and we have all.
Well, and Joe, the other thing I would just add, if you don't mind, is the idea that it's certainly with Track C, and in the case of Tract A, Phase 1, as our kind of outlined, those properties we believe will certainly Track C, the borough controls, so we would have the ability to decide which option makes the most sense as not only the property owner but as representatives of the public. So there is that advantage as well.
Right, but even Track B, for example, right, that's not ours.
Right.
That property owner is looking for some changes in density. There's a redevelopment plan that would have to occur. We're going to require a redevelopment agreement. We don't control the property. We're going to sign off on whether there's on-site or off-site and how the parking is going to happen. So it'll be both in the plan and ultimately in a redevelopment agreement. And that's a parcel that may even be one of the first ones we tackle. But that one that'll be our proof of concept, so to speak, where we'll demonstrate how this is going to actually work, because we're going to have a redevelopment plan. It's going to require a redevelopment agreement, and we're going to negotiate.
Okay.
Next, we have Laurel Kornfeld. Please state your name and address.
Laurel Kornfeld, 106 North 6th Avenue. And first, I'd like to say that I am speaking solely for myself and not for any boards or commissions that I sit on. I believe this is the wrong plan for the borough. I think there are a lot of problems with it. And I'm just going to list some of them that I think are the most egregious. I think taking away I think building on the farmer's market site is a bad idea. That is a public space where we already have festivals and a grant. Recently, there was a pavilion built with a grant. A lot of people, use it for the farmer's market, tree and menorah lightings. And losing those 80 spaces would actually be a detriment to the businesses, because many people on days that the farmer's market is not in session will come park there and then walk around the town going to various businesses. Having fewer parking spaces will make it harder for people from out of town to patronize the businesses here. And it may even limit where the employees of the businesses could park. And I think the same thing is true for the so-called Festival Street on North 3rd. Again, you're blocking traffic to homes, to businesses, and why? If you add this much more residential development without parking, we'll end up with a lot more congestion, a lot more air pollution, which is detrimental to health. We already have carbon monoxide hotspots in town. And more risk of accidents. I think we should focus more on commercial rather than residential development. A lot of the businesses that didn't make it or shut down, such as the comic store, had many people coming from out of town. There was talk about possibly having a marijuana dispensary. A lot of people would like a bar and restaurant. I think the pandemic is a big issue, and we're not in normal times right now. And that's partly why, places have to close at 10 p.m., even restaurants. I think that what we really need to do is wait till the pandemic
30 seconds.
And postpone this until we can have in-person meetings and have a normal economic situation again.
Thank you, Laurel. We have somebody else?
We do. I'm sorry. If I don't lower the hand, I get very confused. It looks like Carla Yanni is up next. Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Carla Yanni. I live at 334 Summit Place. And my question follows nicely on Ms. Kornfeld's. Mr. Hale, when you say that you're committed to a permanent public space on 3rd Street, 3rd Avenue, does that mean you're committed to building on the farmer's market lot? Because I know that public spaces are very kind of delicate and precious. Their history is littered with public spaces that were very carefully designed but didn't work because there wasn't enough density, or their pedestrians weren't walking by, or the shops that surrounded them were not the right shops for that public space. And I'm afraid that the space on 3rd Avenue isn't really big enough for the farmer's market. And I think we're very lucky as a town to have a space that works, which is that very modest municipal lot, but people like it and it's working. So I would really hate to lose that.
Okay. Thank you, Carla. Terry, do you have
any? Next up, I've got David Hughes. Please state your name and address.
Hi, this is actually Melanie McDermott. I will yield the remainder of my time to my husband, David Hughes. We both live at 330.
No, we're taking 2 slots.
Oh, well, okay. David would like to go back in the queue. Okay, I misspoke.
Okay, all right.
330 South 3rd Avenue, Highland Park. So I had a comment and a sort of follow-up question the comment, and I realize this is broader than the redevelopment, but we do need to think about economic development because after all is our major motive for a vibrant town. And I just wanted to remark and get feedback on the comment that we don't want more retail because our retail is undersubscribed. And I was wondering if the fact that our retail is undersubscribed has something to do with our tax structure and specifically what landlords are basically able to get away with in our town. So I think that we really need to look at that kind of thing as we look at this big investment and big change. So that's sort of the comment. And then the follow-up question is, I didn't think that the response to David Copperman. Yes, I was going to say Copperfield. No, David Copperman, my friend David, was I thought it was a little disingenuous because, and I would ask someone to fill us in on the history a little better. There was a redevelopment entity. I don't know the proper terminology for it, but there was a redevelopment group that was chaired by Rosie Baruch. It was and it was staffed by, or whatever, by citizens of our town, including a lot of talented citizens who had a lot of experience to bring to bear as planners and development. That entity was dissolved in favor of making the borough the redevelopment entity. I'm not opining on whether that was a good or bad idea, but I did think that the public deserved the fuller story. It is not the case that only the governing body can vote on redevelopment. So we may have structured things that way, but yeah. So please enlighten us on that, and just any comments on the economic development picture for retail, and how that could be addressed as part of this.
Okay, so yes, several years ago at this point, the redevelopment agency, it was called a redevelopment agency at the time, was dissolved, and the redevelopment entity of the council took its place. The goal was to be able to get redevelopment reinvigorated and moving again. I don't know if there's anyone else here who wants to add to that.
I could just add, Mayor, and I apologize if I did not intend to be disingenuous. Yes, because I was counsel to the agency, right? The agency was dissolved, I think a couple of reasons. It was a cost saving measure because an agency is a separate political subdivision and it requires its own lawyer, its own professionals, its own auditor and things like that. So there was a budget savings. On top of that, I think the perspective was that the extra layer that still required many of the actions, if not all of them, to find their way back to the borough council made it inefficient for a small town. And so I think it was a goal of making redevelopment more efficient and less expensive was the dual purposes. But you're correct, that agency, which would have to be created and it'd be its own independent entity, could have public on it, but the borough council can't. So I did not intend to be disingenuous. I apologize.
And I'd just like to add that another part of it was that we were not seeing a lot of development plans coming to the table, and we were spending money on a redevelopment agency when there was no plans, no actual plans. The agency would be in place, but there was nothing that they had to do to keep them active enough, keep them viable enough to substantiate the agency that we're paying for.
Thank you.
Time.
And you had a second question?
Well, that was about looking holistically at economic development for retail and whether or not the tax structure and what landlords, retail landlords are able to do and not do is not really the root of the problem or part of it anyway.
Right. So time is up for your question, Melanie, and I think you have David waiting behind you.
Here, why don't I do this? I'll leave the hands up, Melanie and David, but I'm going to go to the next person and then I'll loop back around to you guys. So just stay put. The other hand I have up is Flavio Comuves. Please state your name and address.
Flavio Comuves, 304 Lincoln Avenue. What I see in this plan, I agree with it insofar as it's promoting commercial and retail spaces on the first floor. Where I see this as problematic is with the residential spaces above it. Doing some research in terms of where Highland Park stands as compared to other towns in the county, when you compare, or I should say the county as a whole, when you compare the value of our commercial and industrial property to our residential. The county, the ratio is about 1 to 3. Here it's about 1 to 11. As was mentioned earlier, there have been a number of recent housing developments where space that had not been previously housing was substituted for housing. The Y on South Adelaide is one. The Senecal substituted for townhouses is another. Merriwald is another. The area between Cleveland and the train tracks, which used to be commercial space. So I think we're out of balance in terms of commercial and industrial, or really commercial as compared to residential. I don't think this plan furthers that. I think this plan puts us more in the other direction. So I think this really ought to be a much more commercially focused plan. I'll send by separate email, I'll send some data that I had about the parking deck. There's other proposals where a parking deck can actually be combined with commercial space so that the parking deck is hidden. And from an aesthetic standpoint, that looks a lot better. I'm not convinced by the notion that you need residents on top of these buildings. And any of the maps you did, any of the slide decks you have that highlight the residential areas, you look a little further away from Route 27 and all you see is residential. And, you know, if 1,000 feet is sort of the benchmark that we use here, because that's the distance of the parking deck from the new developments. There's a lot of residential property within 1,000 feet.
30 seconds.
So what I would urge you to do is really focus much more on the commercial, on the retail space of this, and scale down even to 0 the residential pieces of it to put the town more into balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Flavio.
All right, I'm going to go back to, I'm guessing this time it's David Hughes. I've unmuted you. Just tell us who you are and where you live.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, David Hughes, 330 South 3rd. One of the presumptions that has stifled development and creativity in our town for the whole 20 years I've been here is the notion that every resident should be able to park her car in front of her house, as well as possibly on her driveway, and also on Raritan Avenue. So we're devoting an enormous amount of public space and public resources to these tin boxes that I'll call planet-destroying death machines. And it's wasteful. And what it means is that the residents create precisely the traffic that they complain about and exclude outsiders from coming in and creating some more traffic, which might be economically beneficial to our town. So I like this proposal. I understand it's changing a bit, but I like the pedestrian-oriented quality of it. I like the fact that you're thinking of a plan that recruits and caters to residents who walk, bike, and take the bus. But I'd like to know that you're serious about it. And being serious about it means rethinking the whole corridor of Raritan Avenue. So that remark about shuttles is moving us a tiny bit in the right direction. But we also need, as I said in the last meeting, we need dedicated bus and bike lanes on Raritan Avenue. We need to rethink the whole sidewalk corridor. The earlier speaker who spoke about Raceway is a death trap. I bike or walk into New Brunswick every day that there's not a pandemic. I avoid Raceway because those cars entering and exiting from Raritan Avenue are totally incautious, often making the turns illegally. We need to close those curb cuts. Finally, and this is one thing you could do you could do it soon. A mid-block crosswalk between 2nd and 3rd Avenue on Raritan. That would make somebody actually want to live where the farmer's market is now, or want somebody to come to the farmer's market who isn't already coming to the farmer's market. I know somebody will say, oh, the Department of Transportation people in Trenton will never allow it, but they did allow it in Princeton. I'm not sure what Princeton has that we don't have other than a lot of money, but we ought to have a mid-block crosswalk, and then you could recruit developers who are going to do a pedestrian-oriented development, and then you could recruit pedestrian-oriented people like me. So think about this, not just in terms of the blocks
30 seconds.
Or the lots. Think about this in terms of the whole town and the way that it functions for the movement of people in some way that's not destroying the climate. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Looks like one last hand at this point. Dan Stern, Cardinal. Please state your name and address.
Hi, Dan Stern, Cardinal, Harper Street. Thanks for calling on me a second time. Just a couple quick things. First, I just want to reinforce what David said because I can't agree with that stuff enough. Any developments along Raritan, they should absolutely be well integrated with the biking and pedestrian plans that were presented pre-pandemic. And hopefully those plans are, all still moving forward. I thought those were great at the time when they were presented. I had never thought of the idea of a mid-block crosswalk between 2nd and 3rd, but that is a great idea in terms of accessing and providing access to the public spaces from the opposite side of town, which is really good. And just two more quick things. The first is that I really hope that whatever these plans end up looking like in terms of the parking situation, that there are no parking minimums built into the different sites, because whatever the uses are, the developer is not going to put fewer parking spaces than they think they need to get the optimal value out of that property. So I don't think there should be parking minimums built in to these plans. And the last thing is that I hope the council and all of the development experts and everybody agree that we can't have more commercial properties in Highland Park and be viable without a largely residential development. There already aren't enough people in Highland Park to support the existing retail space. And like it or not, Highland Park is not a destination. We're sandwiched between New Brunswick and Metuchen, and people are going to go to those places. So these plans, if we want them to have commercial space that's viable, they need to be mostly residential. And if they're not, then they're not going to achieve their goals. Thank you.
Mayor, I've got another hand. Looks like we've got Carl Prey. Please state your name and address. You may need to unmute yourself. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it's not Carl, it's Mary Forsberg, 317 Dennison Street. And I have a lot of questions, and I'm going to try to say them really quickly, comments to get my 3 minutes in. So why did you do zoning in 2019 if you're going to redo it now? That's one. Two, where in any other town in New Jersey or any place in the United States or the world is there a parking garage in the middle of town where a town is 1.83 square miles with 14,500 people in it? I mean, it's ridiculous. Three, why is Track B already considering 4- and 5-story buildings where the master plan does not allow for 4- and 5-story buildings? And I'd like to know, when you talk about comparing redevelopment plans to the master plan, what master plan are you talking about? Are you talking about the first one in, I think it was 2003? Or what are you talking about? The last thing I looked at, and I can't find anything that says we should have 4- and 5-story buildings. The last one was the maximum height was 3 stories, which would make much more sense and be a lot more attractive for Highland Park. The fourth thing is that you talk about meeting with all of the neighbors and all of the people and all of the developers in all of the areas where you're going to have development. You've talked to all of the business people around Track D. I live on Dennison Street. You have not talked to one of my neighbors on either North 4th, which is going to look at the rear end of a parking garage, me on Denison Street, where we are going to be looking at perhaps the entrance. I've heard that's a possibility. Entrance and exit. You're going to shove all of the parking out of a 300 probably vehicle garage into my residential neighborhood, which is a stable residential neighborhood. And you haven't talked to anybody on Denison Street at all, or anybody on North 3rd. So don't talk about how you are talking with all the neighbors, because you have not talked to my neighborhood. You've not made any overture at all. I've talked to Matt Hale a long time ago about where in the world anybody has ever had a plan like this. And he suggested to me that Seattle and 5 cities in Missouri were appropriate examples of this. Those 5 places had 100,000 population, and Seattle is obviously nothing like Highland Park. So you're talking about this plan that has absolutely no sense for any small town like Highland Park in New Jersey. No sense at all.
Fine.
And if you have parking at each, let me just finish. I have just a tiny bit more to say. If you have parking on each tract, are you going to build a parking garage first? I know you have been talking to the former mayor about his property, because I have gotten heavily redacted, many heavily redacted emails from you.
Okay. All right. Time.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor. It looks like Mary was our last raised hand.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight as the redevelopment attorney and Matt Hale and Terry Hobert explained. We're at the very beginning of this process, and there will be a lot more to come. So stay tuned. Thank you all. Good night. May I have a motion to?
I was going to say, do we need to?
Have a motion.
I mean, I'm just wondering, Mayor, is there any council discussion? If anybody has any questions?
No, not the agenda for these meetings. Our discussion is in the earlier part.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second. Night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.